Kiss the coldest man in this bar, Claire, or admit you're too scared to be wanted." The words cut through the rooftop lounge louder than the jazz band, and for one breath Claire Bennett forgot how to smile. Around her, 6 co-workers leaned over a polished marble table, their cocktails glowing beneath amber lights, while Manhattan glittered 40 floors below. Claire stood beside them in a deep green dress she had almost returned because the saleswoman had said it was brave for a woman her size. She was 29, full-figured, soft around the waist, and painfully familiar with the way people turned her body into a punchline before they bothered learning her name. Tonight was supposed to celebrate her promotion at the event planning firm where she worked as an assistant coordinator, but her promotion had somehow become another excuse for Vanessa Cole to remind everyone that Claire was still single. Vanessa lifted her champagne glass and pointed across the room. "Him," she said, "the man in black by the window. He hasn't smiled once. Go kiss him, and I'll pay your bar tab for a month." Nervous laughter circled the table. Claire followed Vanessa's finger and saw a man standing alone beneath a strip of blue city light. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a charcoal suit that looked custom-made to intimidate people. One hand rested in his pocket, the other held a glass of untouched bourbon. Men twice his size kept several feet away from him, and the bartender never let his drink sit empty. His face was calm, almost expressionless, but there was something in his stillness that made the entire room seem arranged around him. Claire did not know his name was Dominic Moretti. She did not know he was the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast, a wealthy and guarded man whose rivals vanished from negotiations before he ever raised his voice. She did not know 3 security men were watching from separate corners, or that the private elevator downstairs had been cleared for his departure. All she knew was that he looked lonely. Not shy, not bored, lonely. She recognized it because she had worn the same expression in crowded rooms for years. "Forget it," Claire said, reaching for her purse. "I'm going home." Vanessa caught the strap and smiled too sweetly. "Come on, we're celebrating you, unless you think he'd laugh." The table went quiet. Claire felt heat crawl up her neck. She had spent years swallowing comments from classmates, dates, strangers, and even relatives who said she would be beautiful if she lost 50 pounds. She had learned to laugh first, so no one could see the wound land. But tonight, exhaustion was heavier than shame. She pulled her purse free. "No," she said softly. "I think you're the one hoping he will." Vanessa's smile tightened. Then she raised her voice. $500 if you do it." Several people nearby turned. Claire's chest burned. $500 would cover the overdue repair on her mother's furnace in Queens. The forecast said temperatures would drop below freezing by Friday, and Claire had already promised she would find a way. She looked again at the stranger by the window. Dominic's gaze had shifted toward their table. His eyes were dark and unreadable, but he was no longer looking at Vanessa. He was looking directly at Claire. She should have walked away. Instead, she crossed the lounge. Every step felt louder than the music. She could feel the stairs behind her, hear one co-worker whisper that this was going to be painful, and see the stranger's security men subtly straighten. Dominic did not move as she approached. Up close, he was more intimidating. A faint scar crossed the edge of his jaw, and his cufflinks bore a silver wolf. Claire stopped 2 feet away, leaving enough space to run if necessary. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "My co-workers dared me to kiss the coldest man in the bar." Dominic glanced past her toward the table. Vanessa was recording with her phone. His expression hardened by a fraction. "And you agreed?" His voice was low, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that made Claire instinctively stand straighter. "I agreed to walk over," she replied. "I haven't agreed to kiss anyone." For the first time, something changed in his eyes. Interest. Maybe surprise. "Then why are you here?" Claire looked down at his untouched bourbon. "Because they offered me $500 and my mother's furnace is broken." She could have lied. She could have flirted. Instead, she told him the humiliating truth and waited for the rejection she had been trained to expect. Dominic studied her face, not her waist, not the shape of her dress, but her face. Then he set his glass on the windowsill. "Do you want to kiss me?" Claire swallowed. Behind her, Vanessa laughed. Dominic's gaze sharpened at the sound. Claire lifted her chin. "I don't know you." "Good answer." He stepped closer, close enough that his body blocked the table from her view, but he did not touch her. His presence felt dangerous, yet the space he gave her felt strangely safe. "Ask my name. What's your name?" "Dominic Moretti." Across the room, a glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered. The bartender froze. Vanessa's phone lowered. Claire saw fear move through the crowd like a sudden draft, but she still did not understand why. Dominic removed 5 crisp $100 bills from his wallet and placed them in her hand. "You don't owe me a kiss," he said, "and you never perform for people who enjoy humiliating you." Claire stared at the money. "I can't take this. Then consider it payment for answering honestly." He turned his attention toward her co-workers, and the warmth vanished from his face. Which one made the dare? Claire looked back just as Vanessa went pale. Before she could answer, Dominic's head of security hurried toward them and whispered something in Italian. Dominic's eyes moved to the elevator, then to Claire's purse. A tiny red light blinked beneath the zipper. His hand closed gently around her wrist. "Do not open that bag," he said. "Someone put a tracking device inside it, and whoever did it followed you here." "Nobody leaves this floor," Dominic said, and the entire rooftop lounge obeyed before Claire understood that the command had been meant for everyone. The jazz band stopped mid-song. The elevator doors remained shut. 2 men in dark suits moved toward the exits, while a third took Claire's purse with gloved hands and carried it to an empty marble table. Vanessa lowered her phone, suddenly interested in the floor. Dominic kept one hand lightly around Claire's wrist, not squeezing, only anchoring her, while his security chief examined the blinking device beneath the zipper. "It's active," the man said. "Commercial tracker. Modified transmitter. Range is at least 5 miles. Claire's stomach dropped. "I bought that purse 3 weeks ago." "Who touched it tonight?" Dominic asked. His voice was quiet, but the room seemed to lean away from him. Claire looked toward the table where her co-workers sat frozen beneath amber lights. "It was on the chair beside me. Anyone could have." Dominic released her wrist at once, as though he had noticed the exact second she became uncomfortable. "Marco, check the cameras. Elena, take every name in this room." The bartender nearly dropped a glass when Dominic looked his way. "And no one deletes anything." Claire stared at him. Minutes earlier he had been a stranger with lonely eyes and an untouched bourbon. Now armed men moved at his command. Wealthy guests surrendered their phones without argument, and the manager hurried from the kitchen looking terrified enough to faint. "Who are you?" she whispered. Dominic turned back to her. "A man with enemies. That isn't an answer. It's the safest one I can give you right now." Claire folded her arms over her green dress, trying to stop her hands from shaking. "Your security man said someone followed me. Why would your enemies track me?" Dominic's gaze shifted briefly to the device. "They may not have been following you." The realization landed cold. They were following the purse because they knew I'd walk toward you. Behind them, Vanessa inhaled sharply. Claire heard it. So did Dominic. He crossed the room without raising his voice, and people moved out of his path as though he carried a storm around him. Claire followed because she refused to stand alone while strangers decided what happened to her. Dominic stopped beside Vanessa's chair. "You chose me for the dare," he said. Vanessa forced a laugh. "It was random. We were only having fun. Fun requires everyone to be laughing." His eyes moved to the phone in her hand. "Unlock it." "You can't order me to do that." Dominic looked at the manager. "Cancel the Cole Media launch booked here next month." The manager nodded instantly. Vanessa's confidence cracked. "That's a $500,000 event." "Not anymore." Dominic extended his hand. The phone. She unlocked it. Marco took the device and began reviewing the recording while Vanessa glared at Claire. "This is her fault," she snapped. She could have said no. Claire flinched, but Dominic stepped between them, his broad shoulders blocking Vanessa from view. "Use her name," he said. "What?" "Her name is Claire Bennett. If you speak about her again, use it with respect." The room fell silent. Claire felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. People had defended her before, usually with embarrassed smiles or gentle requests to change the subject. No one had ever made respect sound like a law. Marco approached with Vanessa's phone. The dare was planned before they arrived. Group messages started at 6:14. Someone using an unregistered number offered Vanessa $10,000 if Ms. Bennett could get within 3 feet of you. Vanessa's face drained of colour. I thought it was a joke. You accepted the money? Claire asked. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Vanessa looked away. That hurt more than the dare. They had worked together for 4 years. Claire had covered her shifts, fixed her mistakes, and once stayed at the hospital until dawn after Vanessa's car accident. To Vanessa, all of that had been worth less than $10,000 and a cruel video. Dominic noticed Claire's expression. He did not touch her. He simply moved closer until the warmth of his shoulder met the cold air beside hers. Take Miss Cole downstairs, he told Elena. She stays with security until the police arrive. Vanessa shot to her feet. Police? I didn't plant anything. Then you'll have no reason to lie. As security escorted her away, Claire saw a flicker in the mirrored wall behind Dominic. A waiter near the service door was reaching beneath his jacket while staring directly at Dominic's back. Dominic, move! Claire shoved him sideways. A black object hit the floor where he had been standing, but it was not a gun. It was a phone displaying a live video feed of Claire's mother's house in Queens. On the screen, her mother was visible through the kitchen window, unaware that someone was watching from across the street. Claire went completely still. Dominic picked up the phone, and for the first time that night his control fractured. Find the waiter, he ordered. Marco rushed through the service door, but the hallway beyond was empty. Dominic looked at Claire, his voice dropping to something meant only for her. Your mother has 2 security teams heading there now. How do you know where she lives? Claire asked. I don't. He turned the phone so she could see the message appearing beneath the video. Bring Dominic Moretti to Pier 17 before midnight, or Claire Bennett loses the only family she has left. Claire's breath caught. Dominic read the message once, then removed his coat and placed it around her shaking shoulders. They used you to reach me, he said. That makes your mother my responsibility. Claire looked up at the feared man everyone else obeyed and saw something darker than anger in his eyes. She saw recognition. This has happened before, she whispered. Dominic did not deny it. Then Marco returned holding a photograph taken outside Claire's office 3 days earlier. In the centre stood Claire, and behind her, watching from across the street, was a man Dominic had buried 12 years ago. Dominic stared at the photograph until the room seemed to grow colder around him. The man behind Claire was older than Dominic remembered, his hair now silver at the temples, but the thin smile and hollow eyes were unmistakable. Victor Sands, Dominic said. Marco's face hardened. Claire looked between them. Who is he? Dominic slipped the photograph into his coat pocket, then seemed to remember the coat was around her shoulders. His hand paused near her collar, careful not to touch her. He was my father's advisor, he said. He sold our family's routes to a rival crew, arranged an ambush, and disappeared before I could reach him. You said you buried him. I buried the man he paid to die in his place. The elevator chimed, and every security guard turned toward it. A woman in a white designer suit stepped out as though she owned the building. She was tall, elegant, and followed by 2 attorneys and a silver-haired man carrying a leather folder. Her gaze moved from Dominic to Claire, then stopped on the coat around Claire's shoulders. Something sharp flashed beneath her polished smile. So the rumours are true, she said. Dominic Moretti finally lost his judgment. Dominic did not move. Bianca, this is not the time. Claire recognized the name from business magazines. Bianca De Luca, daughter of a powerful shipping executive, appeared in photographs beside senators, actors, and men who looked terrified to stand too close to her. She was also the woman Dominic was supposed to announce as his fiancée at midnight, though Claire had no way of knowing that until Bianca opened the leather folder and placed a gold-edged contract on the table. Midnight is exactly why I'm here, Bianca said. The family council is waiting. Sign the alliance, and my father's ports remain open to you. Refuse, and every shipment connected to Moretti Holdings is blocked before sunrise. Her eyes settled on Claire. Surely you won't destroy an empire over a woman you met 20 minutes ago. Claire felt the words land where old insults always landed, but Dominic's response came before shame could rise. Her name is Claire Bennett. Bianca's smile vanished. I know her name. Victor sent it to me 3 days ago. The room shifted. Dominic's security men reached inside their jackets, but Bianca raised both hands. I am not working with him. He contacted my father and offered proof that someone inside your organization has been selling information. He said the proof would be delivered tonight if the alliance was signed. Marco stepped closer. Why didn't you tell us? Because my father wanted leverage. Bianca looked toward Claire, and because Victor promised Dominic would be distracted by someone desperate enough to approach him. Claire's fingers tightened around Dominic's coat. You knew about the dare? I knew a woman would be used. I didn't know it would be you. Claire took one step forward. That doesn't make you innocent. Bianca's eyes narrowed, surprised by the refusal to shrink. You have no idea what kind of room you've entered. I know exactly what kind, Claire said. The kind where powerful people let strangers get hurt because protecting themselves is more convenient. Dominic looked at her, and for a second the anger in his face softened into something quieter. Then Marco's phone rang. He listened for 3 seconds before putting the call on speaker. Wind roared through the device. A man's voice followed, calm and amused. Dominic, I was beginning to think grief had made you slow. Victor, Dominic's expression became unreadable. Show me Claire's mother. Already done. She is safe for now. One of your teams reached her house, but my men were never there. Claire's heart jolted. Then why film her? Victor laughed. Because fear makes people predictable. A second message appeared on the abandoned phone. It showed a live feed from Claire's office building. Her supervisor, Mr. Harlan, was tied to a chair inside the dark conference room, and beside him sat a frightened teenage boy, Claire recognized as Vanessa's younger brother. 2 hostages now, Victor said. Bring Claire to Pier 17 before midnight. No police, no DeLuca guards, and no more than 3 Moretti men. Fail, and the building burns. Claire stepped toward the phone. Why me? The line went quiet long enough to feel deliberate. Because you have something that belongs to me. Claire shook her head. I've never met you. Look inside the lining of your purse. Marco carried the bag back to the table and cut the stitching with a small knife. A narrow brass key fell onto the marble. Claire stared at it. She remembered the day she bought the purse from a charity resale shop in Queens, the volunteer who had insisted it had been donated anonymously, and the strange envelope she had found inside with no name, only an address she had thrown away. Dominic picked up the key without touching it directly. Engraved along the side was the Moretti family crest. Bianca went pale. That opens the private vault beneath Pier 17. Dominic's gaze snapped toward Claire. The vault contains records that could expose every traitor in my organization. Victor's voice returned through the speaker. And Claire Bennett has been carrying the key for 3 weeks. The call ended. Claire looked at Dominic. You should sign the alliance. Protect your people. I'll go alone. Dominic's jaw tightened. No. There are 2 innocent people in that building. And Victor expects me to trade you for them. Claire pulled his coat closer, fighting the tremor in her hands. You don't even know me. Dominic stepped nearer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I know you warned me when everyone else froze. I know you told the truth when lying would have been easier. And I know you are offering yourself to save people who failed to protect you. He turned toward Bianca, tore the engagement contract in half, and let the pieces fall onto the marble. Tell your father the alliance is over. Bianca stared at him. You'll lose the ports, the council, perhaps everything. Dominic looked at Claire. Then I'll lose everything except the one thing Victor thinks I'm willing to sacrifice. Before Claire could answer, every light in the lounge went black and a single gunshot cracked from the service hallway. Dominic moved before the echo died, pulling Claire against the marble bar as Marco and 2 guards drew their weapons. Glass shattered somewhere in the darkness, followed by the panicked scrape of chairs and muffled cries from the guests. Claire felt Dominic's arm around her shoulders, firm but careful, shielding her body with his own, while emergency lights flickered red along the floor. Stay behind me, he said. Someone may be hurt, Claire whispered. That is exactly why you stay behind me. Marco's flashlight cut through the service hallway, revealing a man collapsed near the door. It was one of Dominic's guards, clutching his shoulder as blood darkened his jacket. The shot had not been aimed at Dominic. It had been fired into the ceiling after striking the guard, a warning designed to create chaos. Claire saw movement near the windows and grabbed Dominic's sleeve. The bag! Her purse was gone from the marble table. At the same moment, the private elevator opened despite the lockdown. A figure in a waiter's uniform slipped inside, holding the brass key. Dominic raised his weapon, but Claire stepped closer to the glass wall. "Don't shoot! The elevator is crowded below." Dominic lowered the barrel instantly. The doors closed, taking the thief and the key with them. "Marco, lock the lobby and track the elevator," Dominic ordered. The lights returned one row at a time. Vanessa was gone from the security area, and Elena lay unconscious beside an open service stairwell. Bianca stared at the torn engagement contract on the floor. "You see what choosing her has cost you already?" she said. Dominic turned so slowly that even Bianca took a step back. "Claire did not open that stairwell. Someone with my security codes did." He looked at Marco. "Only 4 people have access." Marco's expression tightened. "You, me, Elena, and your uncle." Dominic's face became still. Claire remembered the photograph, Victor's history, and the way Dominic had said betrayal as though it were an old wound that never healed. "Your uncle knew about the vault," she said. Dominic looked at her. "Salvatore built it with my father." His phone vibrated. A video filled the screen, showing Mr. Harlan and Vanessa's brother inside the conference room. Victor stood behind them, but beside him was an older man with silver hair and Dominic's eyes. Salvatore Moretti smiled into the camera. "Bring the woman, nephew. The key was only the invitation." The video ended with a digital clock reading 11:23. 37 minutes remained until midnight. Dominic's hand tightened around the phone. "He raised me after my father died." Claire heard the fracture beneath his controlled voice. "Then he learned where to hurt you," she said. Dominic glanced at her, surprised not by sympathy, but by understanding. "Victor never needed the key," Claire continued. "He needed us to believe he did." She crossed to the purse's torn lining, where a strip of faded paper remained caught beneath the stitching. Marco lifted it with tweezers. A sequence of numbers had been written along the edge. Claire recognized the handwriting immediately. "That belonged to my father." Dominic's attention sharpened. Claire swallowed. "He worked nights at the docks before he died. He told my mother he discovered theft inside a shipping company, but no one believed him. A week later, his car went through a guardrail." Marco entered the numbers into his tablet. A hidden file opened, displaying photographs, payment records, and audio logs connecting Salvatore to Victor for more than a decade. Dominic stared at the screen. "Your father gathered the evidence." Claire's eyes filled, but she refused to look away. "And someone hid it in that purse until it reached me." One audio file began playing. Claire's father spoke first, warning Dominic's father that Salvatore planned the ambush that killed him. Then another voice answered, younger but unmistakable. Dominic's father promised to protect Claire's family if anything happened. Dominic went pale. His father had known the truth before his death, and Claire's father had died trying to save the Morettis. The room blurred around Claire as years of unanswered grief became something heavier. "My father didn't lose control of his car," she said. Dominic stepped toward her, then stopped, allowing her to choose the distance. "No," he said quietly. "He was murdered because my family failed to protect him." Claire's composure broke. She covered her mouth, but one sob escaped. Dominic lowered himself in front of her, the feared Mafia Boss kneeling on the lounge floor while dozens watched in silence. He removed a handkerchief from his pocket and placed it gently in her palm. "Your father was brave," he said. "So are you." Claire wiped her tears. "Don't make promises because you feel guilty." "I'm not," his voice softened. "I'm telling you why Victor is afraid of you. You are not bait, Claire. You are the witness he failed to erase." Marco interrupted. "The thief never reached the lobby." The elevator stopped at the abandoned 42nd floor. Dominic stood. Security footage appeared on the wall monitor, showing Vanessa leaving the elevator alone with the brass key. She removed the waiter's cap and entered a maintenance corridor. Claire stared in disbelief. She was working with them from the beginning. "Not willingly," Marco said. "Her brother is a hostage." Claire looked at the countdown. 29 minutes remained. She'll take the key to Pier 17. Dominic reached for his coat, then remembered Claire still wore it. You stay here with security. Claire handed him the hidden evidence drive. Victor wants me because he thinks I'm frightened enough to obey and unimportant enough to discard. Let him keep believing that. Dominic's jaw hardened. I will not use you as bait. Then don't use me. Stand beside me. For one long second, they faced each other beneath the restored amber lights, no longer stranger and target, but two people bound by the same betrayal. Dominic held out his hand. Claire placed hers in it. We go together, he said. Before they reached the elevator, Bianca picked up one torn piece of the contract and whispered, You are already too late. She turned her phone toward them, revealing a live feed from Pier 17. Vanessa stood inside the vault, but the person tied to the chair beside her was not Mr. Harlan or her brother. It was Claire's mother. Dominic watched the live feed for 1 second, then took Bianca's phone from her hand. Claire's mother sat tied to a steel chair inside the underground vault at Pier 17, her grey cardigan torn at one shoulder but no blood visible. Vanessa stood nearby, clutching the brass key, tears running down her face, while Victor Sands and Salvatore Moretti waited beside a wall of locked cabinets. A red clock above them read 11:33. How did they take her? Claire asked. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled inside Dominic's. Bianca looked away. The security team sent to her house belonged to my father. Salvatore redirected them. Dominic's eyes turned cold. Your father helped them. He thought Salvatore would honor the Port Alliance after you signed. Bianca's polished confidence finally cracked. I didn't know they would take Claire's mother. Claire pulled Dominic's coat tighter around herself and faced Bianca. You knew enough to stay silent. Dominic handed the phone to Marco. Send the evidence to every member of the family council, the district attorney and 3 newsrooms. Release it automatically at midnight. Marco hesitated. That will expose our financial network too. Then expose it. The room went silent. Dominic had spent 15 years building an empire that criminals feared and politicians pretended not to see. Now he was placing its secrets on a timer because one innocent woman sat inside his family's vault. The council will remove you, Marco warned. They may try to kill you before the files are released. Dominic looked at Claire. They can stand in line. Claire's heart tightened, but she stepped in front of him. You're not destroying everything for me. No, he said. I'm destroying what my uncle built with your father's blood. He turned to Marco. Get the cars. 8 minutes later, a convoy crossed Lower Manhattan beneath cold rain, moving toward the East River, while Claire sat beside Dominic in the rear of an armored sedan. The clock on the dashboard read 11:41. Dominic checked the magazine in his pistol, then noticed Claire staring at it. He set the weapon on the opposite seat, away from her. Your mother comes first, he said. If Victor separates us, you stay with Marco. No. Claire removed the hidden evidence drive from her dress pocket. Victor believes this is the only copy. Dominic's jaw tightened. Claire! He wants control, not just revenge. If I walk in carrying the drive, he'll keep me alive long enough to bargain. You are not bargaining with him. Then what is your plan? Walk through the front door and hope he respects your reputation. Dominic looked toward the rain-striped window. No one challenged him like this. No one except the woman he had met less than an hour earlier, the woman who had warned him, uncovered his uncle's betrayal, and still thought first of everyone else. My plan was to keep you behind me, he admitted. Claire's expression softened, and mine is to make sure you don't stand alone. When the convoy reached Pier 17, the docks were nearly deserted. Yellow security lights reflected across wet pavement, and cargo cranes rose over the river like black skeletons. Salvatore's men waited near the warehouse entrance, weapons visible beneath their coats. Dominic stepped from the sedan first. Claire followed before Marco could stop her. The wind caught the green fabric of her dress, but Dominic's coat covered her shoulders like armor. He moved beside her, not in front of her, matching her pace as they crossed the dock together. Inside the warehouse, Victor's voice came through hidden speakers. Leave the guards outside. Dominic glanced at Marco. If the files stop uploading, finish it manually. Marco nodded and remained at the entrance while Dominic and Claire descended a narrow staircase beneath the warehouse. The vault door stood open at the bottom. Vanessa saw Claire first. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Claire's mother lifted her head. "Claire, don't give them anything." Victor smiled. "Courage appears to be hereditary." Salvatore stood beside him, holding a pistol at Claire's mother's shoulder. Dominic's face showed no fear, but Claire felt his body become dangerously still. "Release them," he said. Salvatore laughed. "You tore up the De Luca contract for a woman you met tonight. Your father made the same mistake. He valued loyalty more than power." "That is why men still remember him," Dominic replied, "and why they'll forget you." Victor extended his hand toward Claire. "The drive." Claire walked forward, ignoring Dominic's warning glance. She stopped 6 feet from Victor and held up the device. "Let my mother and Vanessa's brother go first." A side door opened, revealing the frightened teenager beside Mr. Harlan. Both were alive. Victor nodded to Vanessa, who hurried to untie Claire's mother. The moment the ropes loosened, Claire tossed the drive across the room. Victor caught it. Salvatore lowered his weapon for half a second, and Dominic moved. He struck Salvatore's wrist, sending the pistol sliding beneath a cabinet, while Claire grabbed her mother and pulled her behind a steel column. Victor inserted the drive into a computer. His triumphant smile disappeared. The screen displayed a single message: "Upload complete. Evidence distributed." "You gave me an empty drive," he said. Claire stepped from behind the column. Her fear remained, but shame did not. "You thought the woman everyone mocked would be easy to control." Police sirens rose outside the warehouse as family council vehicles surrounded the opposite entrance. Salvatore stared at Dominic. "You called the police into our world?" Dominic stood between him and Claire. "I chose her world over yours." Victor reached inside his jacket, but Vanessa slammed the vault door control. A steel barrier dropped between Victor and the hostages, trapping him inside the records chamber. For one breath, it seemed over. Then Salvatore pulled a second pistol from his ankle and aimed directly at Dominic. Claire saw it first. She stepped between them as the shot rang out. The bullet struck the steel column beside Claire's head, throwing sparks across the vault as Dominic pulled her down and covered her with his body. Before Salvatore could fire again, Marco rushed through the doorway and knocked the pistol from his hand. 2 officers followed, forcing Salvatore to the floor, while Victor pounded against the sealed records chamber, shouting threats no one bothered to answer. Claire barely heard them. Her mother was gripping her hand, Vanessa was holding her frightened brother, and Dominic was still above Claire, one arm braced against the concrete as he searched her face for pain. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The cold authority had vanished from his voice. Claire touched her cheek and found a thin line of blood where a metal fragment had grazed her skin. "It's only a scratch." Dominic's eyes darkened as though even that was too much. He removed the handkerchief from her palm and pressed it gently to her cheek. "You stepped in front of me. You would have done the same. That doesn't make it acceptable. It makes us even." For the first time that night, Dominic almost smiled. Then the clock above the vault changed to midnight. Every phone in the room began vibrating at once. Marco checked his screen and looked at Dominic. "The files are out. The council received everything. So did the district attorney and the press." Salvatore stopped struggling. His power had not ended with a gunshot. It had ended with the truth carried for years inside a purse belonging to a woman he had considered invisible. Bianca's father was taken into custody before sunrise. Salvatore and Victor were charged in connection with the murders of Dominic's father and Claire's father, along with kidnapping, conspiracy, and years of financial crimes. The Moretti Council tried to call an emergency vote, but Dominic walked into their private chamber the next afternoon with Claire beside him. She wore the same green dress beneath his charcoal coat, her mother's handkerchief covering the small cut on her cheek. Men who had controlled ports, unions, and fortunes stared at her as if she did not belong there. Dominic placed Claire's father's evidence on the centre table. "Peter Bennett died protecting this family from the traitor sitting at its head," he said. "His daughter finished what he started. You will speak her name with respect." One council member laughed softly. "You surrendered half your empire for a stranger." Dominic turned toward Claire. "No, I surrendered corruption for the woman who exposed it." Claire stepped forward before anyone could dismiss her again. "My father did not die so another powerful man could inherit the same lies. If Dominic rebuilds, he rebuilds legally, or I walk away." Shock moved around the table. No one had ever given Dominic Moretti a condition in public. He looked at her for a long moment, then removed the silver wolf ring that represented his control over the family's criminal network and placed it beside the evidence. "Then we rebuild legally." That decision cost him several businesses, 2 estates, and the loyalty of men who had only respected fear. He kept Moretti Holdings, opened its records to federal investigators, and turned the shipping company into a legitimate enterprise. He also established the Peter Bennett Foundation to protect workers who reported corruption, but he refused to announce it without Claire's mother standing beside him. Vanessa accepted responsibility for her part in the trap. Claire did not excuse her betrayal, but she testified that Vanessa had saved lives by closing the vault barrier. Forgiveness did not arrive quickly, and trust was not restored by one apology. Yet Claire learned that dignity sometimes meant leaving a door unlocked without inviting everyone back inside. Weeks later, she returned to the rooftop lounge where the dare had begun. The tables were empty, the city glowed beyond the windows, and soft snow drifted over Manhattan. Dominic waited beside the same window with 2 cups of coffee instead of bourbon. "Why bring me here?" Claire asked. "Because this room should remember something other than your humiliation." He handed her 1 cup and looked at her with the same intensity that had once frightened everyone around him. "That night, you crossed this floor because someone dared you to kiss the coldest man in the bar." Claire smiled. "I never completed the dare." Dominic stepped closer, but stopped before touching her. "You never owed anyone a performance." His restraint moved her more than any command could have. Claire set down her coffee. "And if I want to kiss you now?" His voice lowered. "Then it becomes your choice." She placed 1 hand against his chest and kissed him softly, while snowlight filled the lounge. When they separated, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "You never had to become smaller to deserve love, Claire." Her eyes filled, but this time she did not hide her tears. "And you never had to remain cold to stay powerful." Months later, they stood together at the opening of the Foundation's first worker protection center. Dominic still frightened dishonest men with a glance, but around Claire his voice softened. His hand always waited for hers, and his strength no longer felt like a cage. Claire was no longer the woman laughing at insults before they could wound her. She was respected, loved, and finally certain that her body had never made her difficult to choose. She had simply spent too long surrounded by people who failed to see her. One cruel dare brought her to the coldest man in the room, but courage, truth, and choice turned that moment into a new life for them both. So what would you have done if you were Claire that night, walked away from the dare, or crossed the room and changed your destiny? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful Mafia Boss stories about danger, healing, and the kind of love that chooses you exactly as you are.